Hey guys, it's Jack here. Today we're going to be doing a character analysis video on Hawkeye Mihawk, the Marine Hunter, the greatest swordsman in the world, the true fifth Emperor of the Seas. What do I mean by that? Stay tuned and we'll get into it. But what do we know about Hawkeye? Very, very little, unfortunately. But, I'm going to do my best here. Probably make a 30-40 minute video on him. Let's see how we do. What we do know about him is that before the Great Pirate Era, he was known as a Marine Hunter, which is just fabulous contrast for Zoro being a pirate hunter. Now, what does Marine Hunter entail? Obviously, in the current day story of One Piece, we have the Marines being hunted. They have bounties on their heads now like the pirates do. But of course, that wasn't going on, 30 years ago. So why was he known as a Marine Hunter? It's all just speculation and headcanon, but there must be some personal grudge that Mihawk holds against the Marines. Maybe it's a lapse in judgment on their part that resulted in people that he cared about being killed. Maybe a corrupt Marine was doing something, nefarious to him or people that he loved. I imagine it resulted in his family dying in some manner. Because we know that Hawkeye's alone, we never see him surrounded by anyone. He's a very isolated man. So I definitely reckon some tragedy happened to his family that was either caused directly or indirectly by the Marines, and that's why he held a grudge against them. That's why he was out goddamn hunting them all. Now, that reputation of his spawned a lot of fear from the very Marines that were being hunted, for obvious reasons. But he quickly kept dispatching more powerful opponents after the other. And as he's doing this, he's realizing that, you know what, I'm a pretty good damn swordsman here. And then he starts challenging all the strong swordsmen. And this leads him to eventually become the world's greatest swordsman. How did he get to that path? We don't know exactly who he was contending against. We know for a fact that it was Shanks, but unfortunately that's it. But then again, when you're fighting Shanks, do you really need any more on your resume? Now, Shanks versus Mihawk. Let's touch on this now because it's probably the most contentious part, or it's going to be the most contentious part of this video, because lots of people have different ideas of what this means. I definitely reckon it's an undisputed fact that Mihawk is a greater swordsman than Shanks. They used to duel daily, essentially, and he's known as the world's greatest swordsman. If Shanks was better, he would have that title. So we know that he's better than Shanks at swordsmanship, which is even more telling because Shanks, as we know, doesn't have a devil fruit. So his weapons is haki and swordsmanship. And Mihawk has him beat in one of those areas. Now, he probably doesn't have him beat in the haki department. That's just, speculation. He very well could be better than Shanks at haki. But, sorry about that, guys. As you can probably hear, I'm still sick and suffering from coughing fits when talking excessively like this. So if there's any cuts in this video, that is majority of the reason why. And if I'm sounding nasally, just please try and bear with it. It's me trying to live my best life being sick and trying to get videos out to you guys daily. But what we were saying is that even though it could go either or, the way the narrative is going out, I would definitely say that Shanks is better skilled with haki. Now, where does that leave them though in terms of, strength? I honestly reckon that, I don't know, I could get pelted for this in the comments. I honestly reckon they're very relative in strength. I don't reckon that Shanks is fighting Mihawk 10 times and coming out of those 10 battles victorious in all 10 battles. Now, I don't know how much of a touchy subject this is. I don't know if I'm going to be getting, Jack, you're a fucking idiot. There's no way Shanks is losing to Mihawk. Just the way that it all plays out, the fact that Mihawk, now that he has a bounty again, is literally a bounty higher than Luffy and Buggy. So he's got a bounty higher than 2 emperors. The fact that his title is the world's greatest swordsman. We know, we know the two power systems in One Piece are Haki and Devil Fruits. But swordsmanship in my mind is a close third. It's a close bronze medal there. Because people like Roger, Rayleigh, Shanks, they all were so powerful. Not solely because of this, but a large majority of it is because of their swordsmanship skills. So, Mihawk being the greatest in this area, it's essentially saying he's a better swordsman than Rayleigh. It's telling us he's a better swordsman than Shanks. And these are two characters that are top of the verse in terms of power. So, him being the greatest at this, I reckon, can't be understated just how much of importance and value that is in determining how strong he is. Now, if I reckon him and Shanks had a fight 10 times, do I reckon that Mihawk would win more of those fights? Probably not. I reckon that Shanks probably overall is that tiniest bit stronger, but I reckon it is incredibly relative, where maybe 7 wins to Shanks, 3 to Mihawk, something along those lines. Now, that's kind of getting the Shanks and Mihawk conversation out of the way, and that kind of touched on a little bit my thoughts on Mihawk being an emperor, but that is more into the future of this video. So, we know that he was known as the Marine Hunter. That's where we began with this line of thought. But he also appeared at Roger's execution. That's the first on-screen appearance or on the, page of a manga that we've seen Mihawk. Now, he was inspired, like a lot of people there, by Roger's execution. We mentioned this in the Moria video, and I'll put that up on screen. Give that a free shout out there. People like Moria, people like Doflamingo, and Crocodile, and Buggy, and Shanks, and Dragon, they were all there for Roger's execution, and they were all an all-star level lineup of strong people. And Mihawk is no exception. He could quite possibly be at the top of that list. But he appears at Roger's execution. Sometime after that, he becomes a warlord. He's the first warlord that we ever see and the first one that gets mentioned. Now, it's probably a good segue there to go into his first appearance that we get. We get him getting hyped up by Zeph at the Baratier, where he talks Geen, Don Krieg's right-hand man. Geen is telling them all about what happened to the Krieg's 50-ship fleet. And they say they appeared in the Grand Line, and a week into their voyage, all of their ships got sunk, other than their flagship. And he goes on to say that they were all sunk by a single man. And everyone in the Baratier is shocked, gasping, how is that possible? What type of weapon did he possess? How can you do that? Because you've got to remember that this was in the East Blue. Strength like that wasn't seen in the story up until that point. So us as the audience as well, 50 ships, god damn. And he gets hyped up, and he gets, we see this later on with Oda's writing. He'll hype someone up, and then 2 arcs later they'll appear. Nah, not for Mihawk. He hypes him up, next episode he appears. Because Krieg shows up, he brings his flagship, and Mihawk's yeah, I wanted to destroy 50 ships, not 49. So he slices Don Krieg's flagship apart, and everyone goes running out to see the commotion. And it leads to, we'll skip over him just taunting and condescending Don Krieg, because, it's Don Krieg. But Zoro, this is what we want to talk about. Zoro confronts Mihawk, and they have a fight. Now, I can't understate how amazing this fight was. It's brief, all things considered, for a One Piece fight, but to give you guys some backstory, a lot of people will tell you that it takes 100 episodes or 50 episodes to get into One Piece. And I'm not trying to say this as a toxic positivity One Piece fan, I'm a true fan and you're not, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying it like that, but I was drawn into One Piece from the first episode. From the moment Luffy appeared on Alvida's ship, I was, I'm on board for this journey. Take me, Oda, show me what you're going to do. But it was Mihawk's introduction into the story that made me go from, liking this anime to, oh my god, this is the best thing I have ever seen. Because his appearance here, it's so... I would honestly say that it's perfection for... at the time, he's a villain. Perfection for a villain's introduction. It's up there with people like Madara, people with like Aizen being revealed, and these are end boss level opponents for series. For Mihawk, he's essentially just a side character. He's not even the main antagonist in this arc. He's a minor antagonist, essentially. Or the secondary antagonist probably would be the better term for him. Yet, he gets an introduction in my mind that stacks up to all of them. Another villain introduction like that I can recall, and having the same feelings actually with Naruto, it was Itachi showing up. When we first got Itachi, I got similar vibes to Mihawk here. The only downside is that for One Piece it only took 17 episodes to get into it. For Naruto it was over 100, I believe. Was it over? I think it was about 100 episodes when Itachi got introduced, something along those lines. But, anyway, Jack, stop gushing about just his entrance, but he fights Zoro, and he shows... This is probably what drew me to him. I love characters showing like a lot of disrespect and condescension to their opponents. Aizen, top 3 favorite villains of all time for me. He does it superbly. Mihawk is not bad at it either. Because Zoro shows up, he's got his 3 swords out, he's going haywire, and Mihawk's like, do I have to fight you? Alright, let's do it. And he pulls off his cross necklace and reveals essentially like a Stanley knife. It's a little dagger, a little knife that he uses to cut up food. And he's like, what are the exact words? Zoro's like, oh, what are you going to do with that? And Mihawk says something along the lines of, well, you wouldn't use a cannon to kill a fly, would you? And that enrages Zoro. He goes to attack Mihawk, and we quickly find out just how out of his depth Zoro is. He uses his onigiri technique, which has not been stopped up until this point, or from Yokozu... What? Johnny and Yokozu? No, it's not Yokozu. What's his name? I'll put it up on screen. You know who I'm talking about. Johnny and... Oh, this is pissing me off. Hold on. Jesus, Jack, that was embarrassing. It was Yosaku. I need to have more faith in my One Piece knowledge. But he tells us that onigiri has never been stopped before. So he goes to do it, and Mihawk literally just puts out his pocket knife and stops the technique dead. That's when we know our boy Zoro just fucked up. And Zoro, like, can't believe it, but he continues on. He keeps trying to attack Mihawk, and Mihawk's just giving him attitude. And he stops, like, Zoro goes for the his tiger technique, the over-the-shoulder one, and Mihawk's just like, nah. And as he goes to do it, Mihawk just impales him with his pocket knife right in the chest. But this is now where Mihawk kind of starts to change his tune a little bit on Zoro. Because he realizes that Zoro isn't falling down, he's not stepping back, and he's kind of wondering, what's he up to? So he asks Zoro, and Zoro mentions that, I won't back down, I won't retreat a single step, because if I do, that is going to be dishonoring all the people that had faith into me up until this point. And he's not going to allow that to happen. And Mihawk kind of recognizes the determination and the spirit here. Like, he's being smug and, arrogant to Zoro up until this point, but when push comes to shove, despite someone's physical level of strength, the strength that they display, in their heart there, as cringy as that is, Mihawk can respect. And he tells Zoro to state his name, which Zoro does, and then he pulls out, he's one of the first one we actually see as well, Supreme Great Sword Yoru. He pulls that out, it's a massive black blade, it looks great, it's all jeweled over the handles and everything, the handles, like it has 2, over the guard and the handles, it looks insane. And Zoro appreciates that he's not going to be, taken down by a pocket knife. And he uses his strongest technique at the time, the 3,000 Worlds, and Mihawk just cuts through him. Zoro's chest explodes into blood. Wait for it, because it's going to happen again. And Zoro he doesn't fall to his feet. He just turns around, arms spread, and he awaits his fate. And Mihawk kind of is even more shocked and even more impressed because he's like, you know, he gives him like, what are you doing? And he's like, Zoro has one of his best lines, I reckon, probably up there with like, nothing happened. He's like to Mihawk, scars on the back are a swordsman's shame. And Mihawk just smirks because he like recognizes Zoro's spirit, and he's like, fine, and then cuts him down. Completely vertically across his chest. Zoro goes flying into the ocean. He's bleeding everywhere. Yokozuna and Johnny are there. Usopp are there trying to like stop the bleeding and everything like that. But Zoro has been utterly defeated. And Luffy had been showing his very own spirit during this battle because he wasn't interfering. Luffy is strong enough at this time to realize that Mihawk is... As soon as he saw him stop the Onigiri, he realizes that Zoro isn't going to be able to beat this guy. But he knows how important this is to Zoro, so he stands back. And he lets Zoro have this fight. But once Zoro falls, he can't hold himself back anymore, and he charges at Mihawk. And Mihawk, like, he doesn't do anything. He gets stuck comically in the ship. But Mihawk sees this as well. He realizes that this kid has just showed an incredible level of maturity, an incredible level of devotion to his subordinate, and Mihawk respects this. And then he sees the straw hat, and he thinks about the boy that Shanks mentioned, a strange boy from a small village, and Mihawk's putting everything together. So he lets them go. He lets Luffy go. He listens to Zoro's speech, actually, I should say. Because this is where Loro, God, not Zolo, bloody Loro. This is where Zoro makes his big declaration to Luffy about how I will never lose again. I am going to be the greatest swordsman in the world because that is what you need from me. Isn't that right, king of the pirates? And Mihawk's just looking at it all. And you can feel his contentness because he knows that... Because what Mihawk is searching for is an opponent that can beat him. And he's like, that guy there. He's going to be the one in the future to beat me. I can already see it. And Zoro and Mihawk lets him go with promising results in his mind of what's going to happen in the future. We see him react to their wanted posters, which is, he has a smirk on his face for very happy about that. He also has his first meeting with Shanks that we see after this, mentioning that he ran into Luffy because he's the one that shows Shanks Luffy's wanted poster of 30 million berries, and Shanks is like shocked, and they end up having a drink, and they show that even though they're rivals, that these two men are still very good friends. They probably understand each other more than anyone else does, simply from all the times that they fought together. I honestly reckon it's stated in Bleach by Ichigo that when he crosses blades with someone, he kind of gets a good idea of what type of person that they are. It's kind of like an empath sort of ability about being able to kind of know someone through a fight way, way more than not being able to know someone through an exchange of words. I like to think that that's kind of true of all shonen manga and anime. That's just my headcanon, of course, but to me it makes sense because in a fight, the two opponents are sharing a level of vulnerability that you don't really share in any other circumstance. So I could definitely see that leading to a level of understanding there that people just through words wouldn't be able to kind of comprehend the meaning of. So I like to think that there's no, they're not, super best buddies type of thing, but their level of respect and admiration that they have for each other is a level that only those two men themselves could understand. But the last scene not the last scene, sorry. We see him as well go to Marineford because he's interested in the pirates that they're going to be discussing, mainly Luffy for beating Crocodile. And he goes there. Nothing much happens. He's just, he's there. We learn about Blackbeard here, Blackbeard, wanting to become a warlord here. And Mihawk's just, even though he doesn't say anything, his mere presence in the room, I reckon, does kind of capture the gravity of the situation quite nicely. But it's not even just the main scene. Oh, I suppose there's two other big areas for Mihawk. One pre-time skip and one post-time skip. He appears in Marineford and has an excellent showing. He throws off a world's greatest slash at Whitebeard, which is actually stopped by Jozu, which, if we're saying how strong Mihawk is an incredible feat by Jozu there. I also don't reckon that was Mihawk, like, throwing down his strongest, sword slash. Because, to be fair, and I only say that because Jozu was able to stop him, we know that he just might be a hard counter to Mihawk because Jozu being made out of diamond. I still reckon, though, that if they were fighting, close combat with each other and Mihawk was super serious, it wouldn't be that much of a fight. I did used to really love the theory that Shiryu would be the one that got Jozu's diamond fruit. And, that would then play on Dad's Bones back in Alabasta, complimenting Zoro on, you've finally been able to cut steel. What's next for you then? Diamonds? And that is something that Oda does do. He's the king of foreshadowing like that. And whether or not it's a diamond fruit or a different means, I would place a very high bet on it that we see Zoro cut through some sort of diamond by the end of this series. But we mentioned Daz Bones. Daz Bones has a crack at Mihawk here, and Mihawk literally takes him down in one shot. It's just a different level of strength that we're dealing with at that stage in the story. He has some cool encounters with Jinbei, first son of the sea, another warlord. He has a clash with Doflamingo. It was off screen, but just seeing the two clash, knowing where they're going to end up is really cool. He had a confrontation with Luffy, which Luffy was just utterly powerless for. We get a demonstration of Luffy's potential observation haki here, though, as he goes to attack Mihawk and he realizes his arms are going to be cut off, so he hits the ground. And I think the only other opponent that he really went up against was the Flower Sword Vista, one of Whitebeard's top commanders. Whitebeard's top swordsman, essentially. He had a crack at Mihawk. Most of the fight was off screen. He also recognizes here what's Luffy's true power, because he sees how everyone's drawn to Luffy. He's getting allies from Whitebeard's crew and his allies as well, that Mihawk's these people have never met him, why are they so eager to follow him? And it's because of Luffy's charisma, his conqueror's spirit, and he mentions that how on all the high seas, that is the most dangerous power there. The ability to bring people together. So that's some foreshadowing for what Luffy will eventually end up doing. He also... Well, I'll skip a little bit ahead first. Shanks appears, as we know, and stops the war, and that's where Mihawk's nah, guys, I'm out of here, and he leaves. Now, I don't reckon that has anything to do with, him fearing Shanks. That's a stupid claim, considering that he used to fight him a bunch. Their duels were legendary. The only reason he stopped fighting him is because Shanks lost his arm, and Mihawk doesn't think that would be fair. I reckon it just has a lot to do with, he signed up to fight Whitebeard. He didn't sign up to fight someone he considers a friend/rival, and he's not going to be told no by the Marines. He's not going to be told to do something by the Marines that he doesn't want to do, I should say. So he fucks off. The only other big thing that I want to mention about the war, he fights all these people, as we mentioned, and those names, other warlords, Yonko commanders. The big thing to take away from all of this, because nearly all of the fights are off screen, the biggest thing to take away from it is that through it all, Mihawk didn't receive a single scratch. Not a single mark on him. Through the whole series, every time we see Mihawk, he takes down a 50-ship fleet of Don Kriegs. He takes down the fleet of Marines sent to destroy him on Karaguri Island? Something along those lines. You know what I'm talking about. And he doesn't get hurt whatsoever, which is an insane feat, given the opposition that he was up against. Not to receive a blemish to his forehead, a scratch to his cheek, nothing. So it just goes to show, like, the different tier of strength that Mihawk is on to survive that environment without being hurt in any way whatsoever. Now, I know that other warlords did have the same, like they didn't get scratched either. The thing is, though, we see Mihawk actually confront two warlords, two Yonko commanders, Luffy. He wasn't as strong as he's going to become, but he was still a warlord level threat at the time, and nothing. So I reckon that's more of a feat for him than the other warlords where we just don't see what they did. But I just thought it would be important to mention that. But he goes back to his island and he meets Zoro there. That's where Zoro's been sent from Kuma. And Zoro gets down on his hands and knees in front of Mihawk and expresses a desire to be trained by him. And Mihawk's he's losing some of his respect for Zoro. Like, you would really, kneel down in front of your enemy for this? But Zoro kind of shocks him again here and explains why he's doing this. He's defeated the Humundrils, or the gorilla human things. Humundrils? Something like that. He had defeated all of them, and that was a task that Mihawk had given him. But he knows what Luffy's planning to do. He knows that if he wants to support his captain, the right-hand man of the future king of the pirates, if he wants to live up to his duty of that, then he needs to get stronger. The only way he can get stronger is to learn from the best. And Mihawk hears this, and he admires Zoro's kind of gumption. He's resolved to lay down his own pride to support his captain. That's something that Mihawk can... The loyalty there is something that he can really, really respect. And he agrees to train Zoro. He teaches him all different types of haki. It's important to note, we see armament and we see observation from Mihawk. We never see conquerors. I reckon you'd be a fool to think that he doesn't possess it. We just haven't seen any of it yet. But he trains Zoro, and then Zoro eventually gets on his way. And all of post-time skip, Mihawk doesn't do much. He just chills on his island with Perona. It's the dynamic between these two are very, very funny. I like their chemistry that they have. But the only last bit of this video, other than the power section, is going over what he does after not resigning, but after the warlords being disbanded. And that is destroy an entire marine fleet, and then team up with goddamn Crocodile, join Buggy, and form the Cross Guild. Which I would never have imagined Oda going that way. Crocodile is, if he's not my number one, he's in my top 3 favorite villains in all of One Piece. Probably top 5 characters as well. So to see him teamed up with Mihawk is just, I absolutely loved it. And then to see them, I shouldn't laugh, it's going to make me cough. To see them being made to be the subordinate of Buggy and have Buggy become the emperor was just, probably in my, Buggy's had some good moments. He's Buggy D Clown after all. But that moment especially, I think, was my favorite Buggy moment. Him having these ultimate powerhouses, under his control in quotation marks, was just a riot to see. Them being pissed off and beating him up in the background, their faces when they see the ship as well, being in his image and everything, the poster of them being him in the center, it was just, Oda has comic gold with those 3 there. I want to see more interactions between them all. But that's essentially what he does. Joins Crocodile, joins Buggy, forms the Cross Guild. And that essentially wraps up everything that he does in the story so far. However, there's still some of this video left that I want to go over some things with. Let's go over his powers, and then I'll touch on why I think he's, as strong as I think that he is. And how strong do I think that he is? That's an important question. His powers, he's the world's greatest swordsman. He's powerful enough to send massive sword slices at opponents that kind of, like, I'll put one up on the screen that is like gigantic. He can cut through massive ships with ease. He can cut through massive icebergs with ease. But he can also deflect nimble bullets with ease. His swordsmanship has no weaknesses. Whether it's, brute force or whether it's finesse, he has it all. He can cut down opponents instantly like Daz Bones. He can survive a battle like Marineford without getting a scratch. He can take down, Zoro and Baratier with literally a pocket knife with absolutely no effort whatsoever. He's just an absolute unit. But, this is a very small section for this video, because he doesn't have some sort of complex devil fruit power that we need to spend 5 minutes going over. He's just a goddamn badass with the sword. But how strong do I think he is? I'm gonna probably title this video something along the lines of the true fifth emperor, or the uncrowned emperor, or the man that should have been emperor all along, or the true fourth emperor, something along those lines. You get the gist. And I think that this has been the case for the beginning of the series. I reckon Mihawk, if you had asked me in, Dressrosa, if you're like, Jack, name me the Emperor level, the Yonko tier level strength, I would of course give you the Yonko. Now at this stage, I'm not going to do spoilers, but at this stage we didn't see some of the strength from people we get introduced to in Egghead. So, they wouldn't have been on the list. I did a video once comparing the Yonko and Admirals together in the same tier of strength. My opinions on that have waned slightly. I still reckon they're narratively somewhat relative, at least someone like Sakazuki probably. But my opinions on that have changed a little bit. And if you'd asked me to go back now and say it, it would be the 4 Yonko, and it would be Garp and Rayleigh, and it would be Mihawk. Those are the people, and maybe Sengoku if you want to be generous. Those are the people that I'd put on that tier, and that just goes to show how strong Mihawk is. It's like he's an endgame level boss. We know by the end of the series that the top 5 strongest characters will probably have Luffy number 1, and Zoro, if not number 2, probably not number 2, but like 3rd or 4th strongest in the world most likely. And if he's kind of, at that stage, going to be ready enough to beat Mihawk, we can kind of get an idea of where we would place Mihawk. We kind of mentioned how I think he would do against someone like Shanks. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I think that he's would do the same against like Kaido or Big Mom. You would have to... What do you reckon, guys? Future videos? Mihawk versus Kaido and Mihawk versus Big Mom? I reckon that could be very interesting. Especially Kaido. We know how he deals with swordsmen. People like Odin. People like Zoro, able to scar him. Mihawk would definitely be able to do that as well. 100% certainty in my mind that Mihawk would be able to cut through Kaido. Would he be able to beat him though? Probably not. But it's one of those things again where we just don't have enough information. From what we do see of Kaido, in my dumb headcanon, I would have said something like Kaido's stamina and endurance would be enough to kind of get the edge on Mihawk. But I reckon any emperors, regardless of who they are, Mihawk would be able to get a few victories in if they battle 10 times. I don't reckon there's anyone in the series that, at least that we confirm, like, have an idea of their strength. So obviously not like someone like Eam Summer, and I'm talking about like alive characters. I don't reckon there's anyone in the series that could beat Mihawk, fight Mihawk 10 times and beat him 10 times. Now, that's not a very elegant way to kind of get my thoughts across on how strong that I reckon he is. Oh, I'm really trying not to cough. But let me know down in the comments, do you guys kind of agree with that statement? That junky, poor phrasing of mine. Do you reckon that there is a single character in One Piece that could have 10 fights with Mihawk and beat him all 10 times? Or do you think his power is much more relative to those combatants. I'm really, really eager to see the comments on this video. Now, it's because I just don't really have a proper gauge of how popular Mihawk is. Like, if I came onto here and said, oh, Shanks, he's the weakest of the Yonko, I would know that the first 3-4 comments are going to be, Jack, you're a goddamn fucking idiot. Shanks, the weakest Yonko, he's the goddamn strongest Yonko. It would be messages like that. And I reckon Mihawk, I like to say that he's popular enough to receive a similar treatment. So, let's see how the comments go about it. But that's been everything I wanted to talk about Mihawk. It was a very, very fun video to make. Like I said, from his introduction, he became very dear to me. And that's another thing. Am I the only one that felt that way in his introduction? Do you guys also reckon it was one of the best villain introductions of any series in any medium? Let me know that down in the comments. But I've been Jack Cypher. It's been my pleasure deciphering Hawkeye Mihawk. It do all the I completely butchered that. I'm not cutting it out. And we're all done here. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. Leave down in the comments all your thoughts on the video. I've been Jack Cypher. Cypher out.